Hello and welcome to my channel, I Went to Lose Gaming. Are you ready to lay down the long arm of the law? Well, you're in luck. Yanfei is an anime waifu and is a lawyer or something like that. She has a really rich backstory or whatever, and more importantly, she is Li Yue's most incredibly odd scepter with a scale dangling from just one side. Seriously, if any of you know what this is or what it's for or if it's a cultural reference, let me know. I'm super curious. Now let's get into her kit. Her normal attack shoots fireballs and she gains these scarlet seals around her. Her charge attack consumes these seals and she drops a giant seal of approval onto her enemies. It looks like a really deceptively flat hitbox, which may not be able to hit things vertically, like something stuck in a randomly occurring natural disaster, such as a tornado, but hey, that's just a theory. A seal of approval theory. Her skill, the Signed Edict, causes an explosion and also gives her the maximum number of scarlet seals. If you recall from earlier, she can use a charge attack to consume the seals to do more damage with her charge attack, and conveniently, her elemental skill generates maximum seals for her. Next is her elemental burst, the done deal. This appears to cast quite quickly and applies pyro in an AoE radius. It also gives her max seals similar to her elemental skill, and boosts her charged attack damage and automatically replenishes scarlet seals during its duration. This burst honestly looks low-key OP, and I'll also explain some additional usages for it later on. Overall, her kit seems to revolve around boosting her charge attack damage. Knowing that she appears to be a charged attack DPS character, let's take a look at her artifact options. A few sets stand out immediately since she's a burning book slinger that spams charge attacks. The Crimson Witch set, the Wanderer's Troop, the Retracing Bolide, and the Lava Walkers. As usual with pyro characters, the Crimson Witch of Flames 4-piece set looks like a great, well-rounded set for her to use, and it's overall the set that I recommend. One major benefit of it is that it boosts all aspects of her damage, including her normal attack, her charge attack, her elemental skill, and her elemental burst. Because of the way Yanfei's skill works, it's likely that for most fights, and for most of the duration of those fights, she will have one stack on the Crimson Witch of Flames. However, even while only having one stack on the Crimson Witch of Flames, this artifact set still looks extremely promising and very well rounded. The next set is the Wanderer's Troop set, and this also looks like a great set for her charge attack damage and for her Vape charge attack damage. A great thing about the Wanderer's Troop is that it is an unconditional buff to her charge attacks. It also gets a nice boost to her Vape damage. This is a great set with no ramp up time for her charge attack damage, but it's worth noting that both her elemental skill and her elemental burst with the Wanderer's Troop will do noticeably less damage than the Crimson Witch 4-piece set. Another interesting option is the Retracing Bolide, so if you don't have a very good Crimson Witch set or a very good Wanderer's Troop set, the Bolide is a perfectly reasonable choice if you have a powerful shielder with her like Zhongli or perhaps some constellations on Yanfei. And finally we have the Lava Walker set. It's good for just pure pyro damage, but unfortunately due to how situational it is, I can't recommend it over the Crimson Witch 4-piece set, but it's still a perfectly reasonable option to consider if it's your best artifact set. It's worth noting that with the Lava Walkers, it's impossible for it to gain bonus damage on Vape because as far as I'm aware, you can't vape and hit something with pyro on them at the same time because you have to hit them when they have Hydra on them, and that's why the Lava Walker's Vape damage is very low. For main stats, you want your typical attack DPS stats, which is attack percent on the timepiece, pyro damage on the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet, whichever helps bring your crit rate to crit damage ratio to that 1:2 ratio. For substats, you'll want, as usual, as much crit rate and crit damage as possible, and attack percent and elemental mastery are good as well if you plan to vaporize or melt with her. With this artifact knowledge, moving forward I will be assuming that she will be using the 4-piece Crimson Witch set. We'll take a look at her weapon rankings for both her raw pyro damage as well as for vaporized damage. Oh yeah, and as usual my math is based on damage maximized values. I wrote an algorithm that shuffles around artifact substats and stats until it reaches the optimal stat distribution for said weapons and character combination. If you farm a lot of artifacts, you can generally reach between 60 to 90% of the numbers in this sheet. Now I believe it's to no one's surprise that all the 5-star catalysts are great on her. The Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds, Memory of Dust, and even the Skyward Atlas are all really high on this list. Starting with the Lost Prayer, this is a great weapon for any DPS catalyst user, and it has crit rate as a substat, which makes it a lot easier to build properly, and thus it will help you reach your optimal crit rate and crit damage ratios. Given that you're likely to keep Yanfei on the field for about 9 to 15 seconds, Yanfei can capitalize on its passive and get a lot of additional pyro damage, but do keep in mind that one of the big weaknesses of the Lost Prayer is that it has a long ramp-up time if you switch Yanfei onto the field. Another seemingly good option is actually the Memory of the Dust. Usually the shielding type weapons aren't that great, but I think it actually looks decent on her given our current pool of 5-star weapons to choose from. It's much faster to build the stacks on the Memory of Dust in comparison to the Lost Prayer. On top of that, if you have Zhongli or potentially some constellations on Yanfei, that's unconfirmed by the way, but this is just speculation, then the Memory of Dust's passive may be quite easy to maintain. And building stacks with Yanfei is actually fairly practical. The next weapon I want to talk about is the Widsith. As with most characters, the Widsith for 10 seconds does a ton of damage. However, the RNG nature of its buff and long downtimes are its drawbacks. Nonetheless, given Yanfei's optimal DPS windows, you can definitely highly utilize the Widsith to lay down a ton of pain onto your enemies for 10 seconds. This is a great weapon for her pyro damage. As for more low budget or free-to-play friendly options for raw pyro damage, I think the Blackcliff Agate, a highly refined Mappa Mare, and the Solar Pearl are all decent choices. As usual with the Blackcliff, having the crit damage substat is nice, and if you have some kills, it does pretty well. But otherwise, it's a fairly average weapon. Mappa Mare is reasonable for raw pyro damage if you can trigger a couple reactions with it. Now unfortunately for the Solar Pearl, do keep in mind that its passive doesn't actually buff charged attacks. However, it does buff her normal attack, skill, and burst, which all do reasonable damage. And with its crit rate substat, the Solar Pearl is a solid choice. Now let's take a look at her Vape damage chart and how the weapon rankings change based on that. No surprise, the top weapons on this list didn't really change, with the Memory of Dust, Lost Prayer with many stacks, and Widsith being the strongest. It is worth noting that for Vape or Melt, unless you're fighting slimes, that it's difficult to build stacks on the Lost Prayer, since you need to use Xingqiu's burst for her damage to Vape. However, some other weapons rank much higher in the ranks in comparison to raw pyro damage, like the Mappa Mare, and even the Emerald Orb is quite usable. If you plan to use her with Xingqiu for Vape damage, overall the best free-to-play option I would say is the Mappa Mare. Next, let's talk about Yanfei's potential teammate synergies. Xingqiu stands out clearly because he might be able to allow Yanfei to vape most of her damage. Bennett is great as always, and Constellation 6 Bennett actually benefits Yanfei, unlike for other physical DPS characters. As for the last slot, it can be really whoever you'd like. Perhaps Sucrose for even bigger vape numbers, Zhongli for his OP shield, Venti because Venti, etc. I believe her playstyle and team compositions will actually be quite similar to Diluc's, especially if you use her as a vapeable main DPS pyro character, similar to how Diluc is commonly used. So next I want to talk about my predictions for Yanfei and how good I think she might be. This next part is even more speculative than the previous section and is just my opinion. So quote me now and tell me I'm wrong later, but I'm gonna make a pretty bold claim and I think Yanfei will actually be the best 4-star DPS character overall. Her being able to output around 1200% vapeable damage in a few seconds just sounds incredibly powerful to me. Now it's worth noting that we will barely have any of her talent materials because she's likely to require the new world boss's talent materials, so it will take much longer to properly showcase her potential. But after analyzing her kit, I believe in the way of the Yanfei. So there you go everyone, my hot take and 2 cents on our favorite lawyer in existence, Yanfei. Her charm is unquestionable, and being a top-notch lawyer is sure to help you on your journey through Teyvat's convoluted legal system. I'm personally super excited for her, and will be showcasing her on day 1. Let me know what you think about Yanfei in the comments below, And also, let me and the others watching this video know if I missed anything important. Thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.